Welcome to this episode of the Wellness Collective. I am Ashley Nicole, and before I introduce our guests, I want to remind you to subscribe to the page and turn on post notifications. So when you see that little button down in the bottom of the screen, go ahead and click like or follow, depending on which platform you're watching on. Um, so to get into this topic, I recently posted about an accident on Facebook, and some of the responses I got back were how many of my friends had the same experience. Many of us experience events that change us, but don't recognize them as trauma or understand the steps that we can take to heal from them. Today, we are delving into a deeply important topic: personal traumas in the lives of Black women. Our goal is to create a safe space for discussion and share insights that may resonate with many. So, with that said and done, let's meet our lovely guests. Ladies, can you introduce yourselves?
Taylor, you want to go first, or you want me to go
Yeah,
first?
I can go first. Hello, everyone. My name is Tavia. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I've been in the practice for about 11 or so years now. I'm licensed in two states, Texas as well as in Louisiana. Originally from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, so I still claim that, but I reside now in Houston. Tisha?
My name is Tisa, but on my platforms, which is Grace to Speaking, I normally go by Tisa Lachey. I'm an Army veteran. I am a non-practicing mental health care provider with a specialty in addictions and behavioral addictions, more so alcoholism and drug abuse. I blog, I have a podcast, I have a small business focusing on clothing, and that's pretty much it.
Nice to meet you, ladies. Thank you for joining us today. So, let's dig into the topic. Could you share some insights into why addressing personal traumas is? I'm sorry, I'm getting a step ahead of myself. Let's go back. For me, it was an ATV accident. I've read that there are many other things that can be catalysts for trauma. Can you tell us a little bit more about personal traumas?
So, I can go first. Um, I think we really have to understand the definition of trauma before we can get a little bit into it. And so, if we look at the research, it's about three different types of trauma, how it's categorized. The first one is acute trauma, which is a single incident, could be a car accident, like you mentioned, Ashley. The second could be chronic, which means that it's repeated and it's prolonged. An example of that could be domestic violence. Okay, and then the last one is complex trauma, where it is compact. So you have multiple traumas that's tabled on top of one. I like to break up the sense of trauma into a little T and a big T. So big traumas are the ones that are obvious, the ones that we can probably easily identify, such as a car accident. Um, if you are from the South or lived in the South for any particular time, you've probably incurred or witnessed a hurricane. So that can be what we call a big trauma. Post-traumatic stress, those are what we call big traumas. Trauma can also be something that we witnessed, may not be something that we typically experience. So we're witnessing right now the wars across across our globe. That is traumatic to see that on our computer screens. But then we have those little T's, which is things that we may not even realize that could be traumatic, such as that relationship drama or a sense of work issues or school issues. Those things could be traumatic as well that we may not even put into words as it could be trauma. So I think having a big understanding about what trauma is, and is it a one-time situation, is it repeated, or is it complex where it's multiple traumas that we are experiencing, I think that can really help us understand what a personal trauma means to you.
Oh, it's my girl. I'm sorry. She did such a great job. So I guess I just take a different approach. So I guess I can be like a lot of people, um, especially in our community. So many things are, I guess you can say, our normal. So a lot of people don't even realize that they have experienced trauma because they consistently see the same behavior, you know, on a day-to-day basis. So to them, that is their normal. And for me, I think it wasn't until I got much older and I started going through things in my life and I started to see a different side of things that I realized things that I've experienced and witnessed, growing up in my childhood, that it necessarily was not normal. And 9 times out of 10, I had witnessed traumatic events, or not only witnessed, but I had went through them myself. And I never really realized how much of an impact it had on my life until I started really being intentional about paying attention to how it showed up in other things in my life, like my relationships, my friendships, schoolwork, and things of that nature. So I think learning about personal trauma, so having that definitive answer of what trauma is, can make a big difference, because so many people are walking around battling things and don't even know why it is. And it's just because they have trauma that they haven't identified, or they don't realize when they're in certain settings, they don't know, why they react in a certain way. But it's all because, internally their body and their mind is recognizing something, but they don't really know what it is. So I guess that's my take on personal trauma for today.
And
Okay.
also, just to piggyback off what you said, because there's importance with language, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've adopted the Black Lives Matter, but words matter,
Mm-hmm.
right? Our language matter, our context of which we use the language, that matters as well. And so, just to put some context to what you shared, is what we call intergenerational trauma, whereas the transition or the method of how trauma is passed down from one generation or from one thing to another, right? And especially for Black women, due to just the gender um, privileges or disprivilege that we have, and the current systematic disfranchisement of society, in which we have been subject to microaggressions in the workplace, or macroaggressions in the workplace, which looks like a little bit of that battle fatigue that we experience. We go into the workplace, and for me, I wear locks, as you can see, and they popping. I like them. But when a person who does not look like me want to pet my hair, right? Or when individuals make very alarming messages and they think it's out of jest or think it is funny, that in itself can be very traumatic and can go back to a memory that you've probably buried in childhood, when you was teased about hair, right? And so now we're, as an adult, and we're in the workplace, or we're navigating in life, and we're experiencing traumatic things on an everyday basis. So I think what you shared is so important, of not even knowing that you're experiencing trauma.
Absolutely. And I think that what you said um, brings us directly into our next question, because as Black women, we do experience a lot of macro and microaggressions. There are things that we experience in childhood that other people don't experience. Like you said, the teasing about the hair, teasing about the skin. All of us are chocolate hued, so I'm pretty sure we all may have experienced the same Blackie, different names or different things that we may have been called because of our skin tone, different things like that that can carry with us mentally into adulthood. So when those macroaggressions and microaggressions hit, it hit us differently because we already have been dealing with that. Um, could you share some insights into why addressing personal traumas is vital, especially within Black women's mental health?
Miss T, you want to take it first?
Um, I think it's very important, especially if you, for me, I feel like it was important because to me, it was the difference between me surviving and living. And I think for most of our life, especially Black women, we are given all these survival skills, so to speak, but never really given the platform and the freedom to live and thrive in our own uniqueness and our own, identities. Like how they coin the term all the time. Oh, you're so strong. You're the strongest person I know. And in reality, like I don't necessarily like that. I don't always take that as a compliment because I don't always want to be strong. Like I just want the safe place to just kind of rest my head and be where I can just, be myself and just be at peace and not have to worry about the day-to-day struggles. But for so long going back, even like slavery and before slavery, things like that, we're just taught to take stuff. Like we're just taught to survive, like granted men, especially Black men, they go through things, but as women, we're just taught to take it. Like, oh yeah, I understand that's what you went through, but as a woman, you're a nurturer. Like this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to take it, but we're never really given the space to work through whatever it is that we need to work through. And through time, like we shrink who we are and we don't really get a chance to necessarily thrive. And when we do thrive, like you get punished again because now, like you're too big, you're shining too bright. And so it's a double-edged sword because on one end, you have these things that you really do need to go through. And if you do something like become a mother or a wife, like you don't really get time to work on your personal issues. And so now, because everything is internalized, it shows up in different ways in your relationships, in your friendships. And what some people may perceive as like an issue or whatever, it's not really that. It just starts to bubble up and show up as something different in those relationships, in those friendships, because you've never really had a chance to work through those issues. So for me, I think it's extremely vital that you work through your traumatic experiences, whether it was something that you went through personally or something that you witnessed. I think it's important so that you can be healthy and thrive in life. And so not only that you can show up for yourself, but you can show up for other people in a healthy way, because whenever we don't work through our issues, it shows up in so many different ways. Like some people, you lose your voice. And that's something I always talk about. Like when I was blogging and stuff, like I felt like at some point I lost my voice because I forgot how to speak up for myself, or I was always shrinking who I was or walking on eggshells when it comes to using certain words so I wouldn't offend other people. So I was hurting myself in order to spare other people, when in reality they really wasn't thinking about, what it is that I needed. So I think it's healthy, to learn to work through those things so that you can be a better being and show up for other people, do what you need to do, and just live, because nobody just wants to be in survival mode all the time, because that's how you experience burnout, and burnout is real. And when you experience burnout, a lot of things come up like anxiety and depression.
Mm-hmm.
Some people deal with suicidal ideations, like they just give up on life because they don't feel like they have an outlet. So yeah, it's important to just kind of work through your stuff.
Everything that you're saying, I'm like, yes, yes. Let's snap to that. Like, I agree, but if we could just go a little bit back, just based off of history, like historically, African American as a whole has been really hesitant to seek out support in mental health, or even in healthcare. The lack of trust that we have, um, it can date back even before the Tuskegee syphilis, experiment that took place. And also with our spirituality, I think as Black individuals, we rely heavily. We are the most spiritual beings um, on this globe, and if you go to any church, women's gonna be outnumbered than men, and so we use that as our superpower or as our weapon, but it can be a distraction from really receiving the support that we need. Um, there's one thing with relying on prayer and relying on a higher power, but then there's also things like, let's get down to the root of the problem and talk about it, right? And so it's just culturally, I think as Black women or African American women, we've had some like unspoken rules about don't share,
Mm-hmm.
a sense of like, let's not share private information.
Mhm.
Let's keep it amongst whomever or your close friend. Um, well, when we do share, there's limited or lack of providers that look like us. So now we're sharing in what we're supposed to have a safe space, but now we're having to share too much details just to give some context. Like I mentioned earlier, like our language matters. So when we say certain things, it may not be received well, or maybe interpret wrong, right? Just because of the lack of cultural awareness that some providers have. And so the lack of mental health providers, I think, is can be problematic in even trying to receive support. But you spoke a little bit about like having anxiety and how we really don't show up for ourselves. And many people probably have heard of fight, flight, or freeze,
Mm-hmm.
right? But then there is a fourth one called appease, and that's the people pleasing aspect. And as Black individuals, we try to make sure everyone else is being provided. So we'll set ourselves on fire to keep somebody else warm or to create space for them, and we're not taking care of our own selves. Um, and so I was talking to a friend maybe last week or so, and she mentioned someone asked her like, "Hey, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you always having to be da 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 da?" And so she really had to kind of defend herself. And I said, well, could that person have asked the question differently? Like, what happened to you versus what's wrong with you? So just using the a right language to even normalize, we've all experienced something. Give me the space for me to share versus you're automatically beating me up because I have experienced something.
Hmm. That's deep because just that statement alone, giving me space to deal with, giving ourselves space to deal with the things that we have experienced, rather than seeing it as something negative, just growing from it. That's really deep. I do like that the way you stated that. Um, I realize that a lot of things may be in the way of actually dealing with personal healing or healing from that kind of situation. What can you suggest as far as that healing process, as ways for us to begin? Like, okay, I notice I have experienced something. Now what?
Well, I want to kind of differentiate between the form of crisis and trauma, right? So when we're in crisis, that's a immediate instability of danger. We're not doing good at that point. But
Mhm.
trauma is like a shock that has been produced by either a perceived or a real threat. Maybe it's caused us some psychological injury or pain. So if we're in crisis, we have to help. We got to get help like ASAP to stabilize, to see some sense of like, okay, I'm okay, you know? Um, and not all crisis turns into trauma, and not all trauma is a crisis. Um, one thing like there's three P's that I might mess it up, but want to kind of highlight is the sense of power, the sense of protection, Um, and when I think of power, I think of having influence over others. Power, protection, and privilege. Those three things. So, power having the sense of influence over others, privilege having a sense of unique treatment, um, and protection is the unmerited immunity from problems. When going through something as traumatic as what we all have experienced, different forms of trauma, the big T, the little t, how are you using, or how can we tap into like our power, right? How can we tap into a sense of like we have privilege as individuals. We have access to support now versus what it was many years ago. um, and how can we protect ourselves? I think self self protection is number one, when looking at healing. Um, Hopefully, I answered that question, or maybe I didn't answer the question at all and just threw something else out. But my co-host, she mentioned all of the influence that she has: social media, clothing, um, podcast, vlogging. She has a lot of power in her hands that she really, that you really can tap into. And so how can that influence or change behaviors for other people, right? As it change you. So sometimes things are within our own control. It's always good to receive support, but some things are within our own control.
Mm-hmm. For me, I think one of the biggest things that'll make a difference in your healing is first is acknowledgement. And I think a lot of people sometimes their healing journey is really hard because one, they don't want to fully acknowledge, what it is that they're going through. And you can't heal something that you don't acknowledge exists. So some people, they just kind of, they're in survival mode, like I keep saying, because they feel like that's the only way that they can just move forward. But I always tell people, I was like, not acknowledging, like it's not going to make it go away. Like just because you put it back there and make yourself forget, like it doesn't mean that it's not gonna, keep showing up in different ways. So the biggest thing is that you have to, acknowledge what it is that's going on. And once you can acknowledge what it is that you need to work on and what you need to heal through, then you can make the proper steps and figure out, like what can you do or what approach can I take so that I can properly heal, like what kind of people can I surround myself with, like what works for me so that I can get what I need so that I can be the better version of myself so that I can show up for myself and be a better person in this world. But with acknowledgement also comes accountability. And nobody really likes to be accountable because in your healing process, whether like you the person who caused the trauma or you're the person who received it, at the end of the day, like you still have to have some sort of accountability. And nobody really wants to be accountable for the mistakes that they make in life. But I always say, I was like, healing isn't easy, but nobody really wants to do the work. Like people, they use all these words, and I feel like we are in a clickbait era, clickbait and sound clips. Like we say all the right things, or we write all the the right things because we think it sounds good or it looks good, and people will be like, oh yeah, like oh he or she, they on this journey. I'm so proud of them, but in reality, like on the inside, they're in turmoil. They're not working on anything. They're not doing anything. Like you said, like words mean everything. Like they just know how to put all the right words together, but nobody is doing the work. And when you really healing, it takes work. It's going to be lonely. It's going to be hard. You're going to have some low bottom days and you're going to have some high days. But once you actually go through it, it's so much better because now, like you can identify your triggers. You can identify, like who did what or what part you may have played in it, but you have to go through the process. But nobody wants to go through the process when it comes to healing. Everybody wants an easy fix. So we'll make the assumption, or do these little quick fixes like, oh, well, if I do this, I feel good. Oh, I changed my diet. I'm not going to be depressed anymore. I'm going to listen to this. So I'm not going to be depressed anymore. I'm going to go stand in the sun. So, I'm cool. I'm just going to start hanging with certain people. So
The sun.
I don't deal with that. But in reality, nobody's really healing. Like, we just give off these appearances that we are, but nobody wants to do the work. And like you mentioned religion earlier, I feel like when it comes to mental health, a lot of times religion is our downfall because we're taught to be afraid of what we don't know or what we don't understand. And even if it's not religion, like, we fear what we don't know. But once you get a name for it, the devil is a lie. But like dealing with something, like having spirit, like, it doesn't make you a demon. It doesn't mean you're in sin. Like, it just means you went through life. Like, life happens. Not everything is going to be peaches and cream. And if you go through something, not everything is ordained, because at the end of the day, God gives us free will. And some things, like, we do it on our own. Like, he didn't do it. Like, we just made that choice. And because we made a choice, it had an effect on us. And most people, they don't want to go through, or they don't want to be accountable for the choices that they made. So instead of, acknowledging, what happened or being accountable, they just say, oh, the devil is a lie. I'm gonna just pray about it. But the same, scripture also says faith without works is dead. So people, they want to do part of it. They want to pray about it, but nobody wants to do the work. And healing is work. But we're in a era, and we pass on from generation to generation, where we work on everything else, but we really don't want to put in the work for healing. But like I said, again, the healing is all about acknowledgement and accountability. So if you want to heal, that means you have to acknowledge what it is that you went through and be accountable for, whatever part that you played in it, whether it be small or major.
I got a different take on that. Some things I was like, I definitely agreed with naming what we're dealing with and acknowledging it, right? But with accountability, what if we don't know? Because accountability has been that is the trauma. Like, accountability, we don't know how to hold ourselves accountable, or our friends can't support us, right? Other things in life gives us a blueprint. Like, if we want to lose weight, we got a calorie deficit, right? And exercise, that's the blueprint, right? If we want to get degree, we know class schedule, we have the blueprint. But with mental health, we might not have a blueprint. And if we look at social media or these clickbaits that say, oh, 5 tips to overcome trauma, that might be for Susie, that's not for Tavia, or that might be for Ashley, that's not for Jessica, right? And so it can be hard when dealing with something that we don't really know, and we're not using professional to help us hold ourselves accountable or to walk us through things. In my practice, when someone reports trauma, which is every day, because we all have trauma, I always recommend EMDR. And so it's an acronym for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And so it's the dual bilateral stimulation, which we always do. Most people kind of rock, even in church. We clap our hands. That's bilateral stimulation. We're already, as African, as Black people, we already do bilateral stimulation, no matter what. Like, hit a beat, we gonna do a 2-step, and it's gonna be equal. So I would encourage individuals, if you're serious about really recovering from trauma, then look at some EMDR therapists around your area, because one session in EMDR, according to the research, is as equal to 5 talk therapy sessions. And it allows the client or the person to get words out without having words, because you can remove the sense of re-traumatizing, because in therapy sometimes it can be re-traumatizing of remembering all of what happened and now having to explain it to the therapist. um and so it blows away the myth that I got to be in therapy for a long time, or I got to be dealing with this for a lifetime. um so I would encourage anyone who is really serious about, like, okay, I have some trauma that I'm dealing with, whether it's a big T or a little t, explore professional cognitive or therapeutic approaches that can give you the results versus looking at a 5-step program here, or an Instagram page here, or the TikTok diagnosis here. Um, because it may work for one person, but it's not individualized to you.
Yeah, before you go on, Ashley, I just want to say, like, I agree with you saying, like, with accountability, and maybe I should just like elaborate on, I guess what I was saying, like with accountability, and I say, I guess with accountability, because I feel like once you go through the healing, they say when you know better, you do better.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I guess if I could use myself, I guess for example, growing up in a lot of things, I necessarily didn't have anyone to, like you say, that blueprint for what accountability should be, because everybody was doing the same thing, or they handled everything the same way, with their trauma or things that they went through. So I never had, like that foundation of how to work through the stuff. But as I got older, I guess being around different people or being exposed to different things, I was able to see, like what I guess classified as my normal, it wasn't normal. And whenever I was going through those, those hard things in life, the healing journey, I was able to identify what those things are, acknowledge, like what was wrong in my life. And to me, I feel like once I learned what was wrong, like I was able to acknowledge, okay, like this isn't right. So what can I do to, I guess, not necessarily hold other people accountable, but how can I hold myself accountable to change that behavior? Like, so, what can I do? So once I learned to do that and not necessarily worry about their behavior, but worry about how I react to their behavior, it made a big difference for me. And I guess that's what I mean for, as far as accountability, like in your healing process, what are you doing to hold yourself accountable? Like, not necessarily worried about what everybody else is doing around you, but what are you doing in your own personal life or in your own journey to, address the behavior? Because now that that it is an issue, now that you know that it does exist, what are you doing to make a difference, to change that behavior? Because like you said, it's, if you don't know, then you're going to keep doing it. But once you know, like, what are you doing different? Because now what's right and what's wrong, or you have some type of inclination to like, this may not be right. Like, what are you doing to educate yourself? Like what type of coping mechanism are you using? What, even if you're not seeking professional help, what type of support system do you have to give you the safe space to work through those things? So when I say accountability, it's more so along those lines versus just picking out like, this is not what you're doing, this is what you should be doing. Like, more so just the internal work. Like, okay, now I know better. Like, how am I gonna do better?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And both of y'all said some things that kind of stuck with me. Tisa, when you said, what can I do to hold myself and others accountable? And then earlier, Tavia, you mentioned self-protection, which makes me think of setting boundaries, or being aware of, like, if I'm aware of my triggers, or if I'm aware of, like you said, my behaviors and what makes me act a certain way, then I'm aware of ways that I can hold myself accountable and not act that way whenever this event happens. Um, can you speak to the importance of setting boundaries in the healing process and how this can contribute to one's overall well-being?
Yeah, I think our number one pitfall for many individuals is maintaining silence,
Mm.
right, or being silent by way of fear. When I use the word boundary, first when I first started using the word, I thought that it was like a true barrier. Like, don't cross my boundaries, don't do certain things. That's what I first thought when I, back in the day. But now I use boundaries as a way of, oh, this is what I like. I need you to continue to do it. Whether it's me, like, oh, I need, we can just say exercise. Like, I need to exercise. I need, that's my boundary. Like, I must continue to do that. I don't look at boundaries as a negative thing. I think it helps to improve the relationship with yourself, um, and the relationship with others. So remove the sense of silence. Why remove the sense of that doesn't help. That doesn't help anything. Doesn't help you, doesn't help those that are around you. um I think that could be a major pitfall.
Um, Man, boundaries. Personally, that's something I'm still working on. But one thing that I like that Tavia mentioned earlier was she talked about the fourth aspect of the flight or flight, and it was appease. And I think for most of my life, I kind of functioned in that space, not really knowing that it was a name for what it is that I've learned to do, like always giving people that love or attention that in some way is what I seeked or desired. So I operated out of that or operated out of fear because I didn't really know how to do, or I didn't know how to voice, what it is that I was feeling or what it is that I needed or how people was hurting me, because I was more so worried about how it affect them, how it make them feel, and not worried about me because everybody was, oh, but you're so strong. Like, and not knowing how to set that boundary, like, hey, I'm tired. Hey, what you said, it hurt me. So I just appease, like, you know what? I may be tired, like you may have hurt me, but I can deal with it. So you can be you, because for so long I've had to just adapt when you haven't had to adapt to anything. And I feel like a lot of people like overcompensate, or they appease others, or they just shut down altogether because they don't know how to address that boundary, whether it exists, or if they just have a hard boundary where everything's like, nope, I'm not going to let you in. Nope, I'm not going to do this, just because that's their way of functioning. Like, if I just say no to everything, I don't have to deal, and I don't even give myself a chance, to be hurt or to be angry. So they have a hard shell, versus some people, it's a soft boundary, or it almost doesn't exist. So they try to appease everybody, like, well, if I say yes, or if I kind of dumb down, how I feel about it, or if I just shut up, like either they'll go away, or maybe they can see, what they're doing, it affects me. But in reality, like internally, like you hurt, you tired, you burn out, you angry, because you don't really know how to put that boundary in a place. But a lot of people, they don't know how to establish the boundaries, but they hear the word boundary, but they really don't have a good understanding, of what it is, or it's a blurred line between a healthy boundary and an unhealthy boundary.
Now, teacher, you mentioned a couple of times like being strong,
Mm-hmm.
and I think as African American women, we've been rushed to, or we've been pushed to resiliency,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, that happened, but like, what you gonna do next? Like, or somebody else had it, Mimo had it bad, so I know you can deal with it because auntie da 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 da, she deal with it, but she really ain't deal with it. But that's what we say. She
Mm-hmm.
deal. Um, can you talk about like the emphasis now of our resiliency in our culture, like in Black culture?
Oh man, I don't even know how do I say it. Even with being resilient, I don't even know if that's just a word that I would use for it. Because like, because really, are we being resilient? Because to them it may show up as like strong or we doing this, but in so many other ways we fall apart.
Yeah.
Like it's so like for me, I did all that stuff and everything that I was dealing with. Like I remember when I first started noticing, like, like shaky hands or not really being able to sleep or whatever. Not knowing the whole time those were the forewarning signs of anxiety, or my jaws and stuff would get so cinched together. I'm thinking the whole time it was something dental, but in reality, it was, like it was my anxiety, like different ways that it was manifesting. And I think as far as Black women on the outside, on the superficial level, we show up in so many different ways and we got a smile on our face and we're just kind of pushing through. And it looks like, oh my gosh, she's strong. She got it together. She keeps showing up. She keeps doing for people, but everything else is breaking down. And
Mm-hmm.
oh my gosh, she worked through it, like you were saying, like, oh, auntie, like she made it, like she doing good. But they so focused on you just being present and
Present, right.
just seeing you, not even realizing that you falling apart in so many different ways in
Mhm.
your life. Like you are falling apart. But because we don't
We're
look,
like we're in the Olympics at this point. We're in like emotional Olympics.
yeah, but because we don't look like, we're falling apart, they just like, oh, she got it, she good. Like, girl, you still look good. I like that outfit. Like, oh, I see that smile. I love your smile. But in reality, you just like, I'm tired. I ain't get no sleep last night. I'm hungry because I was feeding everybody else. Like my work been slipping a little bit because I feel like I can't focus because I'm worried about so many different things. And if you go, try to talk to somebody else, they'll be like, "Oh, that's just spiritual warfare. That's just you just gonna be up. That's normal."
This is a season.
Yeah, like
It's a
that's
season.
just normal. Like, but it's not normal. And so because we can still function, like we're high functioning, and most Black women, they are high functioning. And if you're not the standard version of like, oh, I'm just fall apart, she in there, she's stinking, her house, like, you can't show up and have everything together and then still be like, oh, but I'm tired, I'm still this. And no, like you have to literally be just down in the gutter for people to really realize that you're really not as resilient as they think that you are.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of sucks because they think you're resilient, but really you screaming for help in so many other ways. It's just nobody hears you because you're still present, even if it's just a shell of you that's
Mm-hmm.
present. And so many people, they can't even identify the difference between the shell of who you are and you showing up as a full woman. But as long as your physical body is there, they just like, oh yeah, she present, she resilient, she strong, she always there. Not
Mm-hmm.
even on that
The
mentally
filter. It's
absent.
that filter that we have adopted to put on this mask,
Yeah.
right? Of like everything is okay, but in deep down, like we struggling, we're crying at night, or you
Mhm.
know, we think about calling in every single day. Um, so yeah, I connected with you, and I used the word resilient. I don't know. You remember those dolls that like you throw them down and they bounce back up? I don't know what you call the name of it.
I know what you're talking about. I can't
Wiggle
think of the name of
wobbles.
it, but I know what you're talking about.
And so that's when I think of resilient. Like that's the visual definition that I get. Like something is knocked down, but is quickly you can bounce back from it, and you just gotta bounce back. And I think oftentimes we use that word resilient as a good thing, like, oh, she's resilient, like, oh, she bounced back, but like she's deflating, you know, she's struggling, like she came back up grasping for air and you knock it back down. And so that's why I chose the word resilient.
Yeah, like they see you come up, but they don't see the pieces of you that's still down there. Like, just nobody sees that part. Like I said, they see the shell of who we are, not realizing like it's pieces of us they're still trying to, you know, put it all together, or we're walking around in shambles, like we're pieces of a person when we're striving so hard to just be a whole person, but we've had to learn to function in fragments. Like I work on this part of me, I get to this part later. And then as soon as you get this part together, something else fall apart or something else happen. And they only just that this one piece that's like, oh girl, you got it together. Like, I wish I was you. Cause yeah, honey, cause couldn't be me. Cause and the whole time you like, baby, I am you. Like, but I am you. Like, just because it don't manifest the same way, it doesn't mean that we're not going through the same thing. And I think a lot of people misconstrue that. They think everything is supposed to look exactly the same when it doesn't. Look, we go through the same thing, but it manifests differently in our lives. And some people, they think, you know, because I wear a size 8, you got to wear a size 8 too. Like, no, we're going through the same things, but it don't fit the same because you have to take in the other external factors and everything else. You got to take in the support. Like, everything is different, and we want to mimic each other. Well, oh, it ain't different because she had this to go through, but it's still a struggle just because our struggles, you know, like we still going through. Yeah.
I like that you mentioned resilience because that's a word I also struggle with because I don't think I want to be resilient. I don't want to be a strong back woman. I don't want to be resilient. I don't want to be any of those things because it feels tiring. Um, the way I understand resilience to be, the way I understand it to me. I think that that's a word that can be dangerous in the Black community because we're already held to a standard where we don't take time for ourselves. We don't treat our issues. We all of our focus is on other people, and then you add resilience to the mix, and that's becoming a buzzword as well. And we want to be that resilient one. We want to be able to do those things, but we haven't taken the time to heal, or we haven't taken the time to work on ourselves and get past whatever personal traumas or whatever issues we may be going through. Um, in stating that, I want to shift the conversation to healing. Um, I know we haven't talked much about healing, but what effective coping mechanisms or strategies can Black women employ to navigate their own personal traumas? Or what are some ways that you think that they can?
Well, for me, as a licensed professional counselor, I always say seek out help. Right? You don't want to re-traumatize yourself. Trauma is so complex in the name, the feeling, the emotions, everything that's attached with trauma is complex. It's not something that it comes easy or natural, because you have, it can be associated with many things, nightmares, memories, smells, all of those things can be flashbacks to what you've experienced. And so I, as a professional, I would say seek out that support. Um, there's books that one can read. Two books that I like. I don't remember the author, so you'll have to Google it. But one of the names of the book is The Body Keeps Score. And then the other book is The Unspoken Voice. Those are two books that really dive deep with trauma, but thinking about trauma specifically in healing, it would be beneficial for one to have a professional to come alongside of them and offer that support, that accountability, and that way to really effectively learn how to cope. Um, but if you're looking online, they're gonna tell you deep breathing. But after you breathe deep and you have did an exercise with your lungs, after you went to church and clapped and shout and snot, you go back home, you go in your car, and you're still feeling the effects of the weight of the trauma. And so it's things that are really locked that have to be really unlocked with a key. And for me, it's not like a 1-2 step process of like, let me just give you this so that you can deal, because I never want to provide advice or direction um, to re-traumatize someone.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say use a professional that can come alongside of you and support, and actually has a whole bunch of resources um, where you can have affordable counseling in your area. Um, Oftentimes there's a misconception about, oh, I can't afford it. Sometimes counseling can be free. If you're working, most organizations or companies have EAP,
Yeah.
where you can get a certain number of sessions. And like I mentioned, actually has a list of resources that may be beneficial to you, but you don't have to do this alone. Remaining silent is a pitfall and should not be maintained.
Um, I wholeheartedly agree with what you say. I always tell people, listen, seek help, but I always also tell them find something that's tailor made just for you. Don't do what worked for somebody else. Find what works for you. If you need something specifically, when you go look for that therapist or counselor or whatever, find somebody who works in a specialty that you need. So if you know, like if you're real spiritual or whatever, there are counselors who specify in that background. So if that's what you need, find that. Like, don't let getting help, get inside your head, because some people, they're telling, oh, you going to get a shrink, and I tell people, listen, don't let people not being ready to handle their issues stop you from going to get yours addressed.
That's
Do
right.
focus on you, because some people, they'll get inside other people's head because they don't want to address theirs, and they'll psych somebody else out with, oh no, Black people don't do that. Yes, we do, and it's needed. If
And
you
we should. Black people should go to the dentist because they
Yeah,
have
and
to.
tell people that, and I was like, it's wealth. Like, your mental health is wealth, and I was like, it's so much easier to talk to someone that you don't know, because you're not worried about the judgment. You're not trying to filter everything, and you're not going to see this person again until it's time for your next session. And on top of that, I would say, like, education is key. Don't just always take what the people in the streets or internet, don't take everything from face value. Like when you're in those sessions and you're talking, take heed to what's being said to you. And if you feel like you don't understand, then take time to educate yourself to it's very familiar with you. And because I feel like a lot of times, because it's unfamiliar, we're afraid. Or if we get a label, we're afraid. Like if they tell you, like you're depressed, you have major depressive disorder or something, or like that's okay. Like you're still human.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can find, other coping mechanisms that work for you, and speak up, like use your voice. I tell people, you have full autonomy in your sessions, whatever it is, like it's your session. Like we can't tell you, how to feel. Like we only here to help guide and facilitate the conversation. But at the end of the day, we can only work with what's given to us. So, you know, you facilitate the conversation, just talk, like say what it is that you need to say. If you come in there, you're cathartic, okay, fine, just get it out. And then we can work together to build a treatment plan and, find what works for you. But remember that it's tailor made. And on top of that, pick up other things. Like if you like to write it down. because sometimes it's easy to write it down, whatever it is that you're feeling. I tell people, don't worry about the grammar, don't worry about all those, like, just write down your raw feelings. So if you're having a shitty day, all that, like, write it down, and don't worry about spit, don't worry about none of that. Just get it all out. If you need to walk, walk. And that's something that I've learned to do, like just moving around. Like I like to go and walk in the mountains, and it helps because I'm out there by myself, I'm with the nature, and I just walk and I think. If you give yourself, the space and opportunity to kind of think, through your emotions. Don't try to, categorize or just be so perfect with everything. And I think sometimes people try to make it perfect with healing, like, oh, I'm gonna just do this. Like, do what works for you. Like, if exercise works, exercise. If writing works, write. If singing helps, sing. If dancing helps, dance. Like, do what works best for you. Like, you can't necessarily do what works for everybody else. Find something that's tailor made just for you so that you can work through your issues. But most importantly, like you said, like, get some help. Like, it doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you wrong. It doesn't make you bad. It makes you a better person because you found the strength. Excuse me. You found the strength to be vulnerable enough to be like, hey, whatever I'm doing on my own, it's not working. I need some assistance. So I'm reaching out for some help. So get some help and get educated.
Absolutely. I think that what both of you said, as far as getting help, seeking professionals, um, they go a long way as far as getting to that next step of healing. But I also want to touch on how building a supportive community can be transformative. I know a lot of us, when we do make that step, or when um, we do things, we're always doing things for other people. But sometimes we have to be aware that there are people that are there to support us too, whether it's professionals, whether it's our family and friends. How can Black women, both individually and collectively, contribute to creating spaces that foster health, healing, and building that community?
So having a sense of community, I think that is, because we look at the basic needs, like the hierarchy of needs of individuals, like having a sense of support is on that need list, right? Having a sense of belonging, but it comes with trust. We have to trust those individuals to hold space for us, not to share. And maybe they're not sharing it out of being messy. Maybe they're sharing it out of concern. Like, one person come to me and then now I'm saying, oh girl, did you know that Ashley was dealing with this? Like, what should we do? That has violated the boundary of I'm sharing it with you in confidence, and now you're sharing it with someone else. So I think having a supportive community is necessary because it's just our basic needs. We are here as social beings, but I also think one should evaluate who the community is. And just because you have family can be those that you created, maybe not those that are blood related. And so, do you trust these people? Have they proved themselves to you that they're worthy of your trust, right? And vice versa. Um, Family dynamics is something else in the Black community. That's a whole nother podcast for a whole nother day. But you create your own family, um, and so you create your own group of supportive persons that can come alongside you and be your tribe, and be there for you when you need it.
Ooh, I agree with everything Tevia said. Plus, authenticity. I think it makes a big difference, with being authentic when it comes to Black women collectively coming together to have that safe space. One, like everything she was saying about family and having that place where you're safe to tell that, and the people that you're surrounding yourself with can be trusted, because a lot of times some people, they don't talk about what they've been through because they feel that, or they've had the experience where they tried to talk about something, but their very words were used to weaponize against them. Like, oh, well, that's why this happened, and that's why. And so some people, they remain silent because the one time that they tried, to talk about it, their very words and their experiences were used against them. So having the right people, it makes a difference. But I think being authentic and finding the courage, to talk about it, that's a big step. But a lot of us, like we've been through things and we internalize so much and we don't want to share because one, fear, you don't really know how the people around you are going to react. And we just sit there and like, well, I'm not going to say anything. Like, I'll just, I'll figure it out. And the whole time, like the person next to you can, identify, but you're both just kind of like on the same thing. Like, well, I'm not going to say anything. When the whole time you need to say something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a perfect example is when the Me Too movement was like a big thing. Like so many people have all these shared experiences. And once, like one or two people were vulnerable enough, to show that they found the strength to tell their story, so many people, whether it was male or female, they just was like, you know what, me too. And let me tell you about my story. And sometimes all it takes is to see somebody that looks like you and have a similar experience to give you the strength and fortitude to be like, you know what, I did too. It may not have been the exact same thing, but it's something that I can identify with. And I'm glad that you found the strength to tell your story because now that you're telling your story, I can tell my story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what it's going to take again to build some sort of community is to take somebody, or some people to come together and be like, you know what, collectively, we've all been through some things. And if I just, can tell a piece of my story, maybe that'll give you, the power to take your voice back and tell some of yours. So I think it's just a matter of the right individuals just coming out and be like, hey, I'm struggling. And that's just it. I'm struggling. Whatever it is that you're struggling with, just acknowledging the fact that you're struggling. Like sometimes that's all it takes is to start the community to form on its own. Like you'll find your tribe, but you kind of got to put yourself out there in order to, be seen or heard. But so many of us are too comfortable with sitting in the background. And so nobody is seen and nobody is heard. But it takes, a strong person to just step foot out there and be like, you know what, this is what it is. So put yourself out there and your community will find you, I guess.
Start with a little T.
Yeah.
don't give them the big T just yet. Start with a little T and see what they do with that little T.
Yeah. I guess the one time clickbait would be useful. There's still a little clickbait out there.
So one thing that's been consistent during this conversation has been that the number one advice would be to seek help from a professional. I know that in our community, we have church, we have breathing exercises, we have other things to de-stress us, retail therapy, self-care, different things of that nature. How can individuals differentiate between seeking professional help and self-care practices in their healing journey? And what are the signs that it's time to seek professional support?
That's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
See, I have a thought of let's just be preventative. Let's be proactive versus
Reactive.
looking for a reactive way. Like if we go to our dentist, according to the medical model, 2 times a year, that's preventative versus going to the dentist when we have a toothache. Or like some of my family members taking a BC powder and a Coke and thinking that's going to be the dentist to fill in some sense of oral pain. So I think using it as a preventative measure, not waiting until you need help, but just going in as a checkup. Hey, I just want to check up on my thoughts. I just want to check up on X, Y, and Z. That's a continual self-care. Self-care is not just limited to the shower with the warm bath or the candles or the the da. Self-care is really checking in with yourself, creating a sense of how am I going to survive, right? But one will know when it's out of control, when they having sleep difficulties, when you can't eat or you're eating too much. Your body will tell you when things are not well, and if you are paying attention to the signals that your body will give you over a period of, we'll say, 2 weeks or so, at that point, okay, I gotta go seek help. I have not been sleeping, and that's a basic responsibility of all adults. I have not been sleeping for 4 days, 5 days. Something is going on, right? I've not been eating for 2 weeks. My eating changes are different. I need to go seek out some support. My emotions are not the
Excuse
same.
me.
One moment I'm happy and everything is well, and in that same moment I'm having a different shift of emotions, right? So I think major changes with your body will be able to tell you, okay, I gotta seek out some support. Um, if you've shared it more than 2 times and nothing has happened, let's not do the three strikes you out, right? Share it with someone who can walk you through. Like, you don't have to do it alone, whether it's with that tribe of supportive persons or whether it's that professional support. Um, that would be my take on it.
Everything you said, and in a nutshell, when everything you're doing isn't working, it's clearly time. We're probably long overdue at that point to go get some help. Like, stop doing the patchwork. When your patches start falling off and they start manifesting in so many other ways, like, get help, because whatever you're doing, it's not working. And if you can't do it on your own, like your self care practices is not working, just find somebody who can assist you with whatever it is that you need.
Absolutely. Um, I'm so sorry, y'all. I've been wiggling this whole time. I didn't even warn y'all. I was just gonna be wiggling and readjusting all day.
So
Thank y'all
good.
for um, thank y'all so much for sharing y'all insight today. This has been a powerful discussion, a reminder for the need for this discussion within the Black women community. Um, it's most important to me. One of the things that you guys hit on many times and many times. Remember, if you are someone you know is struggling with the trauma or seeking professional help, is a sign of strength. It's not weakness. Um, there are people out there that can help us. We have two right here that look like us that can help us. So stop letting that stigma, stop letting what you think or don't know scare you away from seeking mental health professionals and getting the help that you need, because there's always people there that can help us. And like I said, there's people there that look like us. And like Tisa said, we have a wealth of resources on getting my cheese back on my crackers / resources where you can get that help. Ladies, it's been a pleasure having you guys on the show today. Before we get off, I just want to check back in with each of you. What do you have coming up? Where can we find you on social media? Anything that you want to leave us with?
So for me, I don't know if I'm allergic to social media, but I don't have any social media, personal or professional. I'm a very old school type of person, even though I'm young. Um, I just can't get jiggy with social media. I need to, don't beat me up. I need to, but I just haven't tapped into that. Um, but you can check out my information on my website, www.therapycentra.com. And actually, maybe you can put it in the notes section.
Mhm.
I can give that to you. Um, we're closing out the end of the year, and this is my first time taking a full month-long vacation.
Yes.
So that's going to be my self-care for the end of this year. I'm traveling to 3 countries, 2 weeks each, at the end of the year. So I don't have anything coming up but a vacation on my mind. Start of next year, hit the ground running, and continue to do the good work that Black mental health professionals do. So just being a part of that community and helping serve individuals, primarily those that look like me, in spaces that have difficulty with boundary setting and work-life harmony, as well as just overall healing and wellness. And so that's a little bit about me in the nutshell.
Ooh, I feel like I ain't making no noise right now. I'm in a self-care mode for a minute, but you can find me on social media. My personal pages are generally my name, Tisa Lachey, whether it's got an underscore in the middle or not. But you can usually find a picture, so you'll see my face or my name. And then like on TikTok, Instagram, whatever, you can find Gracefully Speaking on there. So it's generally Gracefully Speaking Entertainment, and entertainment is just ENT. It's one word, and it's you'll know it's me because it's a circle with a black lady. It's a silhouette of me when I had hair, and she's holding a microphone that says Gracefully Speaking.
Okay.
That, I'm just chilling, and prayerfully, I'll get back to rolling with my podcast, talking about a lot of things, but like I said, I'm chilling. Don't mind my brother rudeness that just walked in my house. But that's it. That's all.
That's a lot for me. That's a lot. So you didn't name all the social media handles. I'm like, whew.
You said that's a lot for me. I feel like I ain't making no noise. I'm like, I'm just here. I ain't doing a whole lot. I'm not posting consistently like I should be. But that's my imposter syndrome. But that's a story for a different day.
I'm gonna use you as a consultant for my social media accounts. I'm gonna contact you.
You got it.
All right. Well, again, thank y'all so much for coming. I'll share you guys this information in the box below or to the side, depending on which social media you're watching from. And thank y'all for watching. It's been a pleasure having this conversation for y'all, and we look forward to the next conversation.
Yes, have a good one. Self-care.
Bye-bye. Yeah.